This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
All that to lead up to the thing that I buried the lead on, which is that I have a podcast to announce that's launching the week that this episode drops. It is called Hot Nuance. It is with myself, Allie, and Bree. And it's a Fox and Raven Media production that I'm putting together with the two of them. And you all got a trailer to the day we're recording because I don't know how calendars work, and it released 2 days early. I meant for our little trailer to release on Thursday. It actually released today, Tuesday. We don't have an episode coming out this Thursday because of Seth getting horse tranquilizer last week. Elephant tranquilizer? How did you describe it?
That's what it felt like. I'll tell you about that after we're done with your wonderful announcement.
Yeah. But anyway, you've all probably heard that by now. And yeah, I hope that you all follow us over at the Hot Nuance Book Club social media extravaganza. We have a very nice website because Bree knows how to build websites. But basically what we're doing is we're doing a first-time read of this book called The Ruins of Ambrai, which Bree has read a bazillion times since it was published in 1994, and Allie and I have never heard of. And we're kind of going through it in sections as a first-time reader thing and comparing how a woman wrote fantasy in the 90s to how Robert Jordan wrote fantasy in the 90s. We are taking Bree's decades of professional angst as a professional author and organizing it into a podcast. And it's been very fun recording the first 3 episodes. So new episodes will come out on Mondays. Please follow us on social media and support us because we're very, very excited to be ridiculous and thoughtful by turns, hence the title Hot Nuance.
I'm excited to listen.
It's gonna be fun. I'm most of the way done editing episode 2. And we're even getting transcripts like from the get-go because Anna, Queen,
yes,
Anna of all queenliness,
her Anna-ness,
has volunteered. Yes, has volunteered to help us make transcripts happen. So, we're starting out on a pretty high note, and hopefully you all come along and join in before all the cool kids get there, so that way you have your serious early adopter cred.
Are you bringing in an AI-assisted transcript writer?
Oh, yeah.
Are we? Yeah.
Awesome. They are all about equally good/bad at their job. There's no service that doesn't require a human to go back over it. But what the AI can do to shorten the amount of effort a human has to put into it is quite tremendous. It's pretty good out there. And I happen to have an Adobe Premiere subscription, so I can use their transcription service to create the raw file. I just would rather peel my eyelids off with a can opener than edit the transcript of a podcast that I've already edited. Like, I literally cannot.
Honestly, it sounds like I would rather have my fingernails pulled out.
Yeah.
I've done enough of that to know that going back over it a third time. And then you get to hear all the mistakes you've made either in talking or in editing.
Oh my God, no, I cannot. I simply cannot. Like, I want to be accessible, but like, no, another human needs to do that.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So yeah, I haven't sorted out who wants to do that for Watts yet, but Anna volunteered in the inception of the Hot Nuance process to do that for us. So that's that announcement. But speaking of how hard podcasting is, do you want to start this podcast an hour late?
Yeah. Well, we did have some technical issues, so that wasn't entirely.
We did, but we've been recording for half an hour now. So, you want to move past the announcements and into the content?
Yeah. Okay. So we are. I got to start with the Winter's Heart segment today.
Yeah. Moghedien.
Also because the Crossroads of Twilight segment ends the cleansing. So.
Yeah, we are into the weird spot where the cleansing ends on the one track, but we're going to continue on with it for a few more chapters. The misalignment has finally arrived.
But, we're jumping back in time and seeing everyone's perspective as they watch the entire cleansing. So it's hard. There's no one ending point that we can get to because it ends in multiple people's POVs.
Yeah.
So, but, we'll see here that we are approaching the end of it in Winter's Heart as well.
This is our first of 2 Moghedien perspectives from the cleansing. The high hilltop was not very near to the access key, but even so, the key shone so brightly in Moghedien's head that she hungered for just a sip at that immense flow of Saidar. To hold so much, the 1,000th part of so much, would be ecstasy. She hungered, but this wood advantage was as near as she intended going. Only the threat of Moghedien's hands caressing her corsouvre had driven her to travel here at all, and she had delayed coming, prayed that it would be over before she was forced to. Always she had worked in secrecy, but she had had to flee an attack as soon as she arrived, and in widely separated places in the forest spread out before her, lightnings and fires woven of Saidar and others that must have been Saidin flashed and flared beneath the mid-afternoon sun. Black smoke rose in plumes from burning clumps of trees, and thunderous explosions rolled through the air. Who fought, who lived, who died were all matters of indifference to her, except that it would be pleasant if Sindain or Grandal perished. Or both. Moghedien would not thrashing about in the middle of a battle. And if that were not bad enough, there was what stood beyond the shining key, an immense flattened dome of black in the forest, as though night had turned to stone. She flinched as a ripple passed across the dark surface, and the dome heaved perceptibly higher. Madness to go any closer to that, whatever it was. Moghedien would not know what she did here, or did not do. Retreating to the back of the hilltop, away from the shining key and the strange dome, she sat down to do what she had done so often in the past. Watch from the shadows, and survive.
2 things I think are important. The timestamp and the dome.
Yes.
And obviously Moghedien being a coward, right? We know that, but
She's a survivor, thank you.
She's a survivor. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She does survive. I mean,
yes.
Literally. All the way to being trapped by an Adam at the end.
Adam and a corsouvre. Interesting combo.
Yeah, she doesn't actually get rid of the corsouvre, so...
Yeah, because that'll be interesting when this Shan-Chan discover the corsouvre around her neck. So, yeah, we've got this giant black dome, which is obviously what I think is obviously the manifestation of the taint that the Dark One placed on Saidin. And it's being, there's a center of gravity that is the evil of Shadar Logoth, and the taint that is being removed from Saidin is piling up in that spot. And over time, you're seeing these bubbles as it flows and gets bigger and bigger and swells, very much like a black hole.
Yeah. And it has a weird warping effect on the air, kind of like an event horizon, the way light bends around that impossibility and all that. Yeah.
And that's sort of imagine that he's creating a tiny little black hole right there, right? And then it eventually shrinks down into nothing because it's a small black hole.
Yeah, just as some Hawking radiation advantages.
Yep. and they would do that on that time. Evaporates. On that time scale, that's probably about what would happen. Now the explosion would rip the planet in half, so I can see where everybody's concerned about that.
Minor concern.
Yeah, no, but that combined with the whole time warping around the Dark One during the last battle makes me think that there's a lot of black hole analogy, especially with Robert Jordan's physics degree, black hole analogy going into the Dark One and the taint.
Yeah.
And sort of the end of the universe, the end of everything, and it sucks in everything. And
yeah. And in so many ways, I mean, the Dark One is very much like entropy, right? It's the unmaking of order. It's the unmaking of things. And so, yeah, having the taint manifest physically as a black hole seems incredibly perfect, even though it's not described as a black hole to the men channeling. It's described as insanity. But how do you express insanity visually? A black hole of nothingness makes way more sense, given that the Dark One exists outside of time, almost.
Right. And we know once, they scout this area, what's left is essentially a scooped out, perfect semicircle.
Yeah.
Right? So everything within that sphere vanished and is gone. The event horizon. You're either inside of it or you're outside of it, right?
Right, yeah, and all that matter is gone, consumed in the
Right.
everything that was that massive gravity. It's just gone. Like Shadar Logoth is gone. And if Mashadar had been completely contained there, Mashadar would be gone. But no, Fane is out roaming around looking for a new spot to exist. So Mashadar still exists. But if he wasn't out there, it would be gone. It would have also been removed from the world at this. Also, hello, Ken in chat, who's apparently was just listening to episode 58 and is now in live recording for episode 470 something. Welcome to the time warp, I guess.
There are 400 episodes between there and now. And yet, we're still using the same mic.
I am. Yeah. We are using these mics. And thanks for joining our Patreon at only episode 58. That's awesome.
So that's it for Winter's Heart.
Yeah, that's really all I've got too. It's fun. I like being in Moghedien's head. She's one of my favorite, most entertaining Forsaken. Right. And this is how she survives. This is why she is entertaining. The
selfishness and the cowardice, right? Like, it really makes her one of the most human Forsaken.
Relatable.
Right.
Very relatable.
Right.
You're like, ooh, I could see myself making that decision. I'm not proud of it, but I can see myself doing it.
Me being a coward? No. I just am going to hide over here in the corner until danger goes away. It's fine.
Yeah. Not a physically brave person.
No, that's, I think the funny part is like, oh, and you read these stories and you imagine yourself the hero, and it's like, no, I'd be the Seanchan servant cowering in the corner, please hoping I don't get my head chopped off, right? Like, that's the level of society we are currently at, and if we're being realistic.
Yeah, most of us are absolute cowards. There's so few brave people, and they stand out because they're so unique.
All right, so this brings us back over to chapter 14, What the Wise Ones Know, and our symbol is the Flame of Tarvalin.
And this is where Elayne gets a well mother exam and hooked up with a proper midwife.
Sorry, the tear. Yeah, I said I.
Is it tear? It's the flame.
Yeah, I suppose it is, yeah.
Tear, flame, I don't know. I have a hard time. I'm like, but some fangs are from the lower jaw and they point up. And so I don't understand why the fang, it's not easy to remember the fangs being pointed down because some fangs point up.
That's a good point. But, canines are usually the top fangs that hang down over the jaw.
Right. But think about hippos, for example. Incredible, scary fangs coming out of their lower teeth, or like saber tooth whatevers. Like, it's just, you've got pointy teeth on the bottom. You've got paired canines.
Are hippos creatures of the Dark One? That would be a fun.
They'd make a killer Trolloc,
right?
Like a hippo Trolloc.
Unstoppable. Can you imagine that?
Unstoppable.
That would be a fun panel. Are these animals of the Dark One or not?
Hippos are. I love them, but they are evil, terrible creatures in so many ways. Like, I love them, but don't fuck with them. Please don't fuck with them. They're so dangerous and they're so mean even to each other. Like, they're great, but I could totally see them siding with the Dark One. All right, so I guess I should and this is the chapter where the cleansing ends.
Yeah, for the first time.
I said that before, but this is when Elayne notices the cleansing end.
And that makes sense. We've been with Elayne for 5 or 6 chapters. This is her whole POV from start to finish of the cleansing, from it starting to it finishing.
Yeah.
And so we jump back in time again for other POVs.
Right, yeah, totally. So I'll read us in. Halwyn Nori, the first clerk, and Reen Harfer, the first maid, entered together, him making a jerky, unpracticed bow, and her a graceful curtsy that was neither too low nor too shallow. They could not have been more different. Mistress Harfer was round-faced and regally dignified, her hair in a neat grey bun atop her head. Master Nori tall and gawky as a wading bird, with his little remaining hair sticking up behind his ears like sprays of white feathers. Each carried an embossed leather folder stuffed with papers, but she held hers at her side as if not to rumple her formal scarlet tabard, unwrinkled as it always seemed to be, no matter the hour or how long she had been on her feet, while he clutched his folder to his narrow chest as if to hide old ink stains, of which several spotted his tabard, including a large blot that made the white lion's tail end in a black tuft. Courtesies done, they immediately put a little distance between them, each not quite watching the other. I like that characterization of them, with the black tuft on the tail. It's a nice picture of them.
Nori and Rena Harfor are just a fun pair, right? Because we've seen them with Rand, we've seen them with Elayne. We sort of seen them change over time to become much more ruthless and much more powerful, sort of the way our main characters do. This is what Jordan needs to do with his tertiary, secondary, whatever you want to call them, characters, right? We get so many of these characters who are around our main characters, and we will get more of them in this chapter. But these two were done right.
Yeah, I love these two. They're so quintessential. And of course, they would be in the Andoran court. I mean, Andor is home turf, right? Andor Entire is home turf because it's Camelot, right? It's the English space. It's where the Shire, the Two Rivers is, Like, of course, that's where he got it right, is in the staff of the mythic palace of all fantasy.
As opposed to the nobility where he completely failed.
Yeah. Yeah, the nobility was not as great as the staff. He did better with writing the staff. But that makes sense to me. If for anyone who enjoyed Downton Abbey, right? Like, you enjoy the central characters who are rich, and you enjoy all of the poor people, all of the staff. But the vast majority of the rich friends that come over, that come into and out of the cast, you're like, meh. I don't care about them as much.
So the next chunk I have is actually about Master Harnder. So we have heard this name before. Back in Lord of Chaos, Demira arranges to meet him, right? And so,
yes,
he does not show up. Instead, she is attacked and stabbed by dark friends. She thinks they're Aiel. It's a whole thing where I don't even remember. I think we decided it was Taim trying to set it up or something weird. Like,
pretty sure that's what we decided.
Yeah, like that. There was, a whole setup to try and get her out there and stabbed, and his name was used because he is a spy for the Brown Ajah.
Yeah, he's the librarian who spies for the Brown Ajah. He gets portrayed in this scene as being nefarious. He gets displayed in that scene you're talking about as maybe duplicitous or something, but I think he's just there to find rare books for them.
Yeah.
I think that's really what he's there. I assume every library, great and small, has a spy, quote unquote, for the Brown Ajah, who is there to scour for books and titles and maybe other information about academia. But like, I bet that this is he's always been super like not part of plots. It's just the Brown Ajah's the library Ajah. Of course, they have an agent in every library. Don't be surprised that the librarians are good at their job, please.
It's the secret society of Brown Ajah librarians. All librarians actually belong to it. It's where you learn the Dewey Decimal System. It's like just a whole thing.
Shh, you're not supposed to tell anyone.
I'm sorry. Well, I'm no librarian. I just know things.
Wait, are you Black Ajah?
What? No.
No, you're in IT, right?
Same thing.
Yeah, basically. I was going to blame it on the White Ajah, but, same.
Also, subnote, these 3 brown sisters are coming from the Silver Swan, which means they're probably Codswain's brown. Right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because the Silver Swan is where she's...
I think that's the hub that she's basically organizing all of her loyal Aes Sedai through, which is, in a lot of ways, you've got a third faction of Aes Sedai, very much like you have a third faction of nobility right here in Andor, right? You've got Aramella's group, you've got Elayne's group, and then you have this third faction, which is kind of Dylan's group, which, like, it makes sense that Elayne's going to win because Dylan's loyal to her, but, like, what if they band together and support somebody else is sort of her big fear. And then you got this 3-way split, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but then you have the 3-way split, each with 6 houses behind them, and that's bad.
Yeah, he is recycling the 3-way split, but it makes sense because as we hear in like book 1, like, its tripods are a really stable thing. And if you can manage that, it's very sturdy. If you lose one, it's not so sturdy, right? So if Jordan wants to build tension that lasts for a long time, it makes sense to have those conflicts be 3-way.
Right, because if it's 2 ways, it's very easy to have one side be more powerful than the other and then just win. But once you throw in a spoiler candidate, it becomes anybody's race. We've seen that many times. Where like, oh, if you can split one person's vote, the person who's actually, maybe less likely, Egwene, to become Amaryllin seat might get the vote, right? Mm-hmm. And in some cases, that third party is the Black Ajah. Right. Yeah. Electoral politics are complicated.
But yeah, totally. It makes sense for creating good drama for us to chew on for books and books.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask you about this line a little bit later. She's found discovered spies for the Red Ajah, legacies of Elyda's time in Camlyn. So, of course,
for longer than Elayne's been alive.
Right.
Yeah.
So, of course, she's going to have, loyalists and spies there.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Makes sense.
She had a very robust system in Andor and nowhere else. So it's going to take a while for it to fall apart without her there to manage it. It's only been, a year since she left and wasn't micromanaging all of that stuff. So yeah, it's still totally all in place.
When Logain was last there, she was there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We get a mention of how rats are creeping into the palace. We're getting more and more of those hints of how the Dark One's influence is creeping in. This is another one of those to be like, there's rats. You need Aes Sedai help to deal with the rats. And then in like several more chapters, maybe it's next book, you get even the wards aren't keeping the rats out. Like there's an escalating problem there that we're getting pointed to.
Yeah, and we've seen that in the White Tower with the lack of boards. We've seen it in inns where everybody's getting cats, right? Like,
yeah.
We're starting to see even more things. We're seeing the dead folks rise up. We're seeing
meat spoiling, even when it's been put under the keeping wounds.
Right. And we're soon going to see people exploding with bugs. We're going to see, all the bad things, people turning into lava. Yeah, it's about to get real nasty because the pattern's just falling apart. And Rand not helping with his balefire.
No. But yeah, the slide towards like reality is falling apart. Like we're kind of tipping over the edge right about here. Like Elayne during the cleansing is kind of witnessing the world tipping over the edge from like ghosts are weird to ghosts are normal. Ghosts are the least you have to worry about. Like that's kind of what she's witnessing over these chapters we've been covering for the past couple months.
Yeah, there is that point where they're just like, yep, ghosts can't hurt you. Keep cleaning the floors because like we're in the end of the world and you still have to do your job. Amazing appropriate. Amazingly appropriate.
We will continue to have words about that mindset as the podcast and climate catastrophe continue apace together.
And this whole thing ends with her saying a good many people are interested in what happened in Camlyn, whether for its effect on trade or other reasons, like they want books. Sometimes it seemed that everyone spied on everyone else.
And she thinks about how even the Seanchan are going to end up with White Tower spies in their ranks at some point, which is like hilarious on 2 levels, because first of all, the Seanchan won't take anything from the White Tower lying down. And secondly, the Seanchan are way ahead of them with their system of listeners.
Right.
So like the Seanchan are going to be infiltrating the White Tower right back. So there's going to be an absolute parody and it's fine.
And then the comment on the Black Tower, give them a minute. Come on, they just got started. They'll have spies in a minute. Like, yeah. No, we haven't done any yet. But I mean, come on, they don't have walls up yet. Like,
yeah, for sure. Like, it'll take time. Yes, there's this end of the world thing, but there's also these big glacial processes that will outpace even the end of the world.
Mistress Harfor gets up there and starts talking about Mr. Skillet.
Mr. Skillet. John Skillet. A barber.
Right.
And yeah, he is being used as an information go-between with Aramilla's camp. He's been turned
that's right.
multiple times. He's a spy that is just easily bought by each side. And Elayne is sure that she's going to manage to get him. Well, Mistress Harfor is sure that she's going to keep him loyal to their side. But that's who he is. He's just a spy that they've turned.
And they're going to send him back in. The only thing we get out of him is in Knife of Dreams, chapter 16, he reports to Mistress Harfor that Aramilla is writing to Camlyn right? So that's how they get warning that she is riding into Camlyn. So he apparently stays loyal, like he doesn't turn again. You know, he ends up on the winning side, I guess, kind of.
Yeah. He gets recruited here and performs his job admirably, and we see that happen come true in Knife of Dreams. So there's nothing really super dramatic about that, but here it is. Here's what we do. As about spoilers, he's going to show up next book and not do anything dramatic. I mean, he does bring good. It's important that he brings the news he does. It gives them a little bit of warning, but you know, he doesn't do anything that like changes. It's just they're doing their spycraft work, and this is how the spycraft is manifesting.
A bit about Elayne's philosophy of servants, which is like you can fire them and hire them, but you're going to spend all your time training them and not actually have any, and just have them back to where you are. Or you can accept the rules as they do and live comfortably while you use your time to rule. And I wish CEOs figured this one out.
Yeah. It's good advice.
Stop firing and hiring people. Just give your people raises. It's cheaper in the long run.
Yeah, it's good advice. He is recycling this, as I said, from an earlier discussion with Egwene, where this is the second time that this discussion happens. He wrote it in two different scenes and then kept both rather than picking the better of the two scenes. I kind of like this one better, but I also kind of like the other one better. I don't know which one I like better. But anyway, I pointed out before that this scene gets recycled, and here it is, time 2.
That's just an editing mistake then, because that's something that should be caught in the edit.
Well, I mean, it's two different writings of the scene.
Right.
It's the same thought process, and it feels redundant. But I mean, you probably won't notice if you're only reading these books like once or twice. It's only like on the 10th pass, at which point, like, that's on you. If you're reading these books 10 times, like, you're going to start catching these things, and that's on you. That's on me. Like, it's my fault. I'm the problem. That's what we do here. Yeah.
Aradia, what do you think we do? We catch these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't be using my brain for anything more productive.
No.
That's what those brain cells needed to be spent on.
She lets Mistress Harfour know the sea folk are leaving.
Right, because that just happened last chapter.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then we talk about the 9 arsons last night, which we know those are dark friends, right? That's...
David Hanlon is orchestrating that.
Right.
Yeah, at Millie Skane's orders, yes.
Yes.
But Hanlon, as being in charge of the guards, is the one who's actually orchestrating it.
And so she's like, yeah, tracing it back to Aramilla or Elayne or Nian would require Matt Kaufman's luck. Like, yeah, because they're not starting it.
Right.
It's all dark friendery.
And it is, as best they can tell, intended to draw the water wagons away from the food storehouses so that those can then be set on fire. These are all decoy fires in the name of potentially setting a different fire that would really tip the siege in a very different direction. If you lose your food stores, your siege calculations have to change rapidly.
Losing food stores and losing the sea folk to make the gateways to get more, right? That's a double blow right there.
Yeah, for sure. And they're not even sure that that's why the arsons are happening. They just map it out and look at the pattern and attempt to discern what's happening. And I think they're right, because we know that the Dark Friends are trying to undermine the siege. But they're making that conclusion based on very little data, just from mapping out what's happening, which I approve of, because maps are important and helpful. And it's nice to see maps being used in a very strategic sense.
I love how she just has her map tucked into her bra, basically, that she whips out at all times.
It's up her sleeve, but yeah. It's very, very low-tech GIS.
There's a mention of some of the nobles, Marine, Arwen, and Serenade.
Marn, Aran, and Sarand.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you, Michael and Kate.
Yeah, I'm impressed they do as well as they do in their pronunciation. It's crazy how hard it is to maintain any consistencies, even having heard these books many, many times.
Yeah, well, I mean, phonetic spelling and the notations for phonetics that people use, I imagine, help somewhat, but you have to determine it once at least. But yeah, basically what happens is these 3 houses have taken out a second mortgage against their estates, and the banks don't know it's
and then
their
a third
second
mortgage.
And then a third.
Fourth, yeah.
And none of the banks know that, because credit ratings and integrated digital systems are not part of their banking system. It's like pigeon and handshakes. So they've borrowed heavily against their estates, and they now need to win or go into ruinous debt, because they will empty out the country's coffers to pay back their war debt, because that is how governance works. And that's why we need nobles and hereditary power to keep us in check, because otherwise, who will give away all of our national treasure?
I didn't vote for him.
Where's a lady in a pawn line about distributing swords? Talk about mercenaries a bit.
Well, they're talking about how, they borrowed all this money. Maybe one of the things they're trying to do is bribe Elayne's mercenaries to turn CoT, right? And how do you, they talk about how do you secure against that, and I think they basically end up with, well, we'll rotate them through the different the gates, so they're not all on one gate at one time, and we'll make sure to watch them with other mercenaries. It's not very clear. She just doesn't have enough people to do what she needs to do.
They basically have to rely on the reputational honor code that mercenaries have, that betraying a gate wrecks your career. So you're going to have to be bribed a retirement's worth of money in order to betray a gate as a mercenary company. And that is a very flimsy thing to be hanging your defenses on. It's like, well, it's a bad career move to steal corporate secrets. And it's like, but someone could choose to do that.
Right. And then the secrets are gone and there's nothing you can do.
So, yeah, they really desperately need more people. That's why Charles Gaibon gets an on-the-spot promotion when he shows up with like 10,000 loyal men or whatever, is because of how desperately unsecure this situation is being laid out right here.
And those men then make the mercenaries more reliable.
Right, because now the mercenaries they're peppered throughout loyal men rather than in their own companies per se.
Meanwhile, Elayne had a, discovery of alum on her.
Alum!
Which is not aluminum, as we discovered when we were looking into it. But yes, so she actually is taking out loans against future profits on legitimate investment and resources.
Right. She discovered she has a resource and she is immediately borrowing against the promise of that. It's a much better bet than triple mortgaging the estates you already have. There is a danger, though. She points out that those loans, if the bankers find out about those loans, they might take the political football into their own hands and decide who's going to win. Because, again, those people with those debts will empty out the country's coffers to pay back those debts. So the bankers need to not know that all the country's money is in the offing right now.
Right, because if Elayne wins, the banks don't get paid back. Right. And so they might want the rebels to win, in which case they're going to throw even more support behind Elayne's opponents. Right,
and maybe even, withdraw some support from Elayne or send in their own ninja assassins or whatever, It's very tenuous. Elayne is holding on by the skin of her teeth at this point.
But right now they're thinking if Elayne wins, they get to seize the land and then that pays back their loans. But because of the double and triple loans, they can't. Yeah, that makes sense. So Nori and Harfor leave. Avienda announces someone tried to listen. Any clues?
Yes, because she had warded the room. I assumed that it's Carrie-Anne, the Dark Friend.
Okay. Because they assume Windfinders, which makes me immediately assume it's not the Windfinders.
Yeah, very much so. Right where my mind went to. Well, clearly not them. Especially because they're leaving at this point. They are packing and looking for Talon and getting out of there.
You got the kin.
Yeah. But there's...
Yeah, I think the Dark Friend is a good candidate.
Yeah, I mean, because we learn later that she's been killing kinswomen and leaving clues and they aren't getting found. And so she gets more and more obvious with how she's killing them. So again, it's like she's flying farther under the radar than she thinks she is. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I feel like eavesdropping with impunity whenever she gets the opportunity and trying with impunity, even when she gets rebuffed 10 times, she's going to try an 11th time. I think that totally fits with the level of scrutiny she feels she's under.
So a brief mention of the power that it's not going to harm them, because if it would have cracked the world open, it would have by now, which I don't think is a good assumption, but, you know.
Agreed. Like, have you heard, like in earthquakes, buildings don't fall over till minute 2 often.
Right.
Like, if you stop at 1.5 minutes, maybe those buildings didn't fall. Like, it's the continuation that brings about the problems.
This is like watching somebody just dump a bunch of pressure into a tank and just keep dumping more and more and more air pressure into it, and watching it like get bigger and bigger and bigger, and be like, well, if it hasn't exploded yet, it's not going to, right? Like,
yeah.
Like, no, it could go at any time. They're still pressurizing it. Like,
yeah.
Oh, hey, JediPants, good news about the ozone layer. We fixed we stopped destroying the ozone layer, and it's mostly coming back.
The one time we did a protocol that actually was taken seriously.
We all pulled together and said, hey, no more CFCs, and no more CFCs.
And it's repairing itself. And that should have been a pilot project for how all kinds of climate stuff should go down. But no. Instead, it's just a weird outlier.
It's like, oh, yeah, that totally worked. It did, didn't it? You want to do it again? No.
Right.
No.
Yeah, absolutely not.
That cost us a little bit of money.
My God.
That can't happen again. She pulls out that folded mat from her coat. I swear to God, she sticks it under her bra.
I mean, I could see her doing it, except for the boob sweat. She doesn't want the ink to run from the boob sweat.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, because I mean, let's be real, she definitely has boob sweat. she has big enough boobs that boob sweat is a problem.
Well, no, but she ignores the heat, so she's not sweating.
Birgitta doesn't ignore the heat.
For some reason, I was thinking Elayne pulled it out.
No. Birgitta was the last she that was mentioned, as she pulls out a map from inside her short coat. I guess she pulls it out from inside her short coat.
And then, of course, Birgitta wears a short coat. Well, I don't know why. I have no idea why I thought that was Elayne. Just reading too quickly, I guess. Yeah.
No, the Captain General is the one with the information. So, yeah, we get a nice picture of what's happening around the city, and
I did think it was really funny that Elayne was carrying around a map all this time. Like, I was gonna comment on that. I was like, it seems very funny. The Queen's just like, is she just studying the map that much? Like, what is okay? Birgitta makes a lot more sense because she's doing all the strategy.
So yeah, they look at it in order to understand the reality that the Borderlanders are moving, but not fast enough. And they're gonna get to Camlyn too slow for what Elayne wanted. News of them isn't traveling fast enough. And we're just looking at the map of Camlyn and the surrounding areas as this discussion happens.
Oh, question in chat. What would happen if Nynaeve Rand broke? Would the power just go rogue?
If Nynaeve Rand broke during the cleansing, would the power just go wild? I mean, it'd be like disconnecting a live wire, right? It would go like hopping around, like if a power line got snapped, right? You've now got a live wire just like writhing across the ground, setting trees on fire. It's too big to just stop, right? I mean, I guess when we had the bowl of the winds, Zaida or whoever it was, Rhaenyra, just stopped channeling at the end, and Elayne thought that was really rude and not great, and there should have been some off-ramping, but it was at least a deliberate stoppage. It wasn't like she got shot in the head and died.
I think that wasn't even stopping the weave. That was just dropping the power.
Right.
That was just releasing the power quickly. That wasn't like she stopped the weave normally. I want what happened if the weave is interrupted? Yeah,
I wonder if you'd end up with some kind of backwash of either the Shadar Logoth evil or the Dark One's taint, contaminating the exposed Sidar, or blasting out across the world and making some sort of 1,000-mile wide crater desolation of Smaug kind of thing.
Right. Because if instead of canceling each other out, what if suddenly, basically because he's containing the interaction between the two, what if by stopping channeling, you end up with the taint that he brought into the world and Shadar Logoth just, spewing all over the place?
What if everyone suddenly has the taint madness in their mind, and it's not just channelers, it's everyone.
Right.
I think as much as Cadsuane resented the need to lower her shield a little bit in order to heal Nynaeve, That was probably her best call in that whole battle.
Right.
Was making
The
sure
wiping
that
away her
Nynaeve
fatigue.
didn't just physically die of exhaustion while the weave was still in her possession. Yeah. Yeah, I don't like the implications for the world if Nynaeve or Rand had their hearts stop during that process. That would have been very bad for everyone.
Yeah, because if Nynaeve went, the funnel would go.
Right. And then the taint is moving through the funnel, and now the funnel's gone, but the taint has been isolated from Saidin. Mm-hmm. So now it needs to attach to something. It's like a free floating like oxygen molecule. It's going to oxidize something.
Can you imagine Rand tainting the female half of the source instead of cleansing the male half?
I mean, the last battle's over. Like, everyone pack up your marbles and go home.
Right.
Like, we lost.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be bad. That might be what would happen. Because, I mean, the taint would be... What if you just moved the taint from Saidin to Saidar? And it's like...
Mission accomplished.
Right.
The next big chunk of discussion is about the Borderlanders. And remember, she rode out and talked to them and arranged for them to cross into it and then arranged for them to cross out of it again. But now she's just playing it up to look threatening to everybody else. So she looks like the best option, so she can ride up to them and be like, "Be gone," and they leave.
Right. Be gone. How easy that was. I am such a good ruler.
Right. Yeah. I did not set this up ahead of time. It's very magician, you know. Look over here while I pull the trick out from over there.
Yeah. A more cynical person might call it a psyop, but, you know.
False flag operation.
She's literally like, if necessary, we will plant rumors about what the Borderlanders are going to do ourselves. Like, Elayne, you're not making me feel good about monarchism. Monarchy is not doing it for me. So you know she's going to be having her guardsmen falling down in the heat because she wanted a birthday parade. You've seen that video, right?
No.
Oh, yeah. Some guardsmen were practicing for the King of England's birthday party out on a tarmac wearing those like tall ass black beaver fur hats and the heavy wool jackets. And there's a video of a guy that's completely passed out on the tarmac while the rest of them practice around him. And a little team of medics comes out to collect him. And like there's another team taking another guy off in the back. And it's just very like you stiff upper lipped too close to the sun and now you're dying of heat stroke. And I don't think we need kings and queens. I just don't.
Well, you know, we live in America. We pretty much got rid of kings and queens.
It's the one thing I unabashedly and unreservedly love about my country is the fuck you to kings that we are founded on. So one part of our myth I'm fine with. This one part of our like national identity I'm fine with. Like no notes. Fuck kings. Fuck the entire concept of having a monarch. I'm fine with that.
I'm nodding.
Now, it'd be really cool if our elected leaders could be slightly more diverse in the pools that they are drawing their first among equals from. The whole dynastic power thing that keeps coming up is a little frustrating, but we're trying, and points for that.
Not a huge fan of the oligarchy we live in, but yeah, you know, I would rather, I mean, at least it's not a monarchy, right? At least the people have to be good enough at making money that I don't know anymore.
We did have multiple Bushes.
Yeah.
So,
And
we were going to have multiple Clintons, though granted it wasn't intergenerational. But like, it's a small group. But we're making progress in the sense that we have demanded they not call themselves a king. And I'm going to give us points for that.
It's still basically a noble class that trades the kingdom between them.
Labor is subject to capital. That has not changed, for sure.
Are we suggesting that the workers should take maybe seize the means of making stuff?
All I'm saying is we made the wealth. We run the machines. We make their coffee. We are more than them. And math.
Do not fuck with us.
Oh, they have fucked with us, and the finding out has only just begun.
Well, anyway, before we start a actual revolution, like we have that power.
Hey, man, podcasters have done some weird shit.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I like this line. In her book, a man had to be mad in the first place, or he would never have chosen to become an Ashaman.
Interesting choice of words.
Yep.
Mad. I mean, given that madness is the result of going to channel, it's like a man has to already be mad to want to go risk being mad.
I think there's a certain amount of like deliberateness there of like, well, it doesn't even matter if the one power is cleansed. You have to be mad to want to be a man who can channel. So by definition, they're mad. So I don't have to worry about the one power being cleansed. Not that she's thinking that consciously, but that's sort of what I think Jordan's getting at.
There's a certain dehumanization that is rife through these discussions.
Yes. Thank you for putting that in a better term. They're talking about as long as Bashir and Bale keep a close rein on their men, Bashir is going to be gone. He's going to be hanging out with Rand in a little while. So,
Bale will still be around.
Yeah, he will, and he'll keep an eye on them.
And none of those forces really want to get involved, so there's not a whole lot of risk. And then they talk about how they need to keep the Borderlanders clear of the Black Tower. And Elayne is frustrated that she has to concede that much respect to the Black Tower. But, wisely, she decides to put it aside because it is what it is.
There's a paragraph here that's just a list of the remaining nobles. Lord Luhan, Lady Elorian, Lady Abel, that's Lord Abel. Mistress Okalyn?
Mistress Okalyn and Mistress Fote are kinswomen. But yeah, we've got Lord Luan, Lady Elorian, Lord Abella, House Pendar, and House Tremaine. Yeah, so it's just a list of all those like unsettled, uncommitted nobles we were talking about earlier, that third faction. Dylan is desperately trying to wrangle them into Elayne's side, and they are either refusing to talk to her or refusing to agree with her.
Right. And as far as I can tell, Elorian is with Abel and Luan. They're all together.
Yeah.
Abel and Luhan later, I believe, pledged to Elayne, but Lady Elorian doesn't, and she gets sort of like thrown in prison. No?
She doesn't get thrown in prison. She gets wooed.
Okay. Or she's like the last one, isn't she? Yeah. Or something like that? Yeah.
I honestly don't remember if she decides to join with her or not, but it becomes moot because everyone else in her camp does, and the fact that she's the one holdout doesn't end up mattering because it doesn't have to be unanimous. But no, she doesn't get imprisoned because Elayne knows that it's like her offense at being mistreated by Ravine. So she like does this whole like scene with the bringing an opera play into the palace and stuff to like woo Elorian back, basically.
Oh, that's right. Towers of Midnight, chapter 22. She invites Elorian and other nobles to the Laurel Palace to see a play. Okay. She tries. Yeah.
But yeah, eventually the rest of them decide to go along with Elayne, and I think Elorian just gets to have her conscience vote, and it's fine.
She sounds like she's just mean and nasty about it the whole time. And it's like, well, Elayne, you now have to live with that.
Well, if your very best friend suddenly completely turned on you and had you publicly flogged, you might just decide that you're never going to be nice again.
Fair enough.
It's just a lifelong feud. And like, it's a little rude to pass it on to her daughter, but like, it was a big betrayal. And who knows, maybe in 10 years she'll get over it. Like, at this point, it's been not even a year. So. And
then you've got
Amlyn, Arathel, and Pelivar.
Yeah, and those are the Dylan supporters.
Yes, they're the ones that are almost on the edge of forcing Dylan onto the throne. If it was possible, they would do it. And
aren't those the ones who end up, like, the children end up inheriting and pledging allegiance to Elayne?
No. I don't.
Okay.
No.
I thought Pelivar was.
No, you're thinking of Perival, and that's a first name, not a last name.
Jesus, yeah, that gets me every time. That gets me every time.
No, it's rude as hell. Rude as hell. So they have this good little strategy of what's the thing we least want them to do, and then let's prepare for that. And then the really important thing happens, which is that Elayne gets honey in her tea. That's important. We should spend 2 pages on that. And then the wise one, Mona Ella, comes in. That's literally the next thing I've got.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's funny because I do so much research on these names beforehand, and then we start reading, and I immediately forget all the reading I did on these names.
You gotta just leave the tabs open.
Yeah, I do, and it's funny. I can't get to them fast enough.
Mona Ella shows up to basically give Elayne a well-mother exam, and she has a kinswoman in tow because she's going to teach the caressing the child weave that the Aiel have from the Age of Legends. It's a maternity weave that somehow the Gen Aiel kept going throughout their long wandering and passed on to the Aiel before they died out.
And it's, delving, healing, only works on a pregnant woman.
Yeah, it's a specialized kind of delving that can be turned into a healing. Like there are some things that can be corrected through the weave, or it can just check. It's very cool.
What sort of things do you think they can correct, right? I was thinking like breech births.
Yeah, or like cord around the neck kind
Yeah.
of stuff. I bet, yeah, they can change the position of the baby. I bet. They can probably also heal like really minor things with like developing organs and stuff that are like maybe developing wrong, or like if there's like a kink in the spine or something, they can maybe just kind of nudge it back. But yeah, I bet breech birth is a really big one. Like we can just move the cord off the neck and position the head where it needs to be, and now we're not going to be risking mother and child in the birth process. I never really thought about it, but that's the simplest. But I bet there's a couple other things.
Sure. I mean, it's not like birth is complicated or anything.
No, birth is the simplest and easiest and least dangerous thing humans have ever done.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I don't even know why they bother checking. It's like, don't women just squat down and pop the baby out and
yeah, pregnancy's
painless,
a breeze,
easily,
and
yeah.
then you just pop them out, and then the baby's walking right away.
Right,
Doesn't need any
right.
aftercare at all.
Am I thinking of women or horses?
Definitely thinking of buffalo and elephants and gazelles. I mean, man, freaking wildebeest, like giraffes. Like the giraffe babies, they fall like 10 feet or whatever and like land really hard for their very first moment.
Well, how else are they going to learn to fly?
Apparently. But yeah, it's a really cool weave. It gets described as like a hum that sort of like passes through her. So I imagine that it's like
It's ultrasound.
It's like an ultrasound.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like they can do magic with it rather than it just being sound. It's ultrasound. Super ultrasound.
I love the shade at Nynaeve that Sumiko had like totally outstripped her at this point in the healing. Like, it's like Nynaeve's been on the road fighting Forsaken. Sumiko's just been like nose to the grindstone studying everything there is to know about healing. Like she is absolutely the healing master. Even though she needed the inspiration from Nynaeve, but she's gone way beyond the instinctual use of the weave that Nynaeve has created.
Yeah, because Nynaeve has a lot of raw talent and has put in very little study. Sumiko has a reasonable amount of raw talent and a ton of study. So she was able to take what she learned from Nynaeve and apply it and get tenfold impact out of it.
We get confirmation that channeling doesn't hurt the fetus of a woman who is channeling.
Which makes sense to me because channeling is apparently a natural thing that humans do. So why should it affect another natural thing that humans do?
Confirmation she's going to have twins. We know it's going to be a boy and a girl because of Min's foretelling, and it's frankly infuriating that Elayne can't remember that, because I don't think she, honestly, 100% do not think she would have forgotten that. Most important news, right? Like, you're going to have a boy and a girl, healthy, right? She remembers the healthy part.
Right. Like, how can Avienda and Min have been talking through this incredibly important thing and had only half the details stick? And also, why does this weave not give you a gender reveal?
I think they're too young.
Oh, that's fair. That's not, if they keep doing it throughout pregnancy,
Right.
eventually she would know the genders before.
But again,
born.
like doing ultrasound after, what has it been, a couple of weeks?
That's fair. That's fair. She's not even enough to show yet. Like the genes haven't settled on. Yeah, no, that's for sure.
And I doubt they're doing genetic tests. They're probably just like literally looking for genitalia, and they haven't developed yet, right?
Right.
So,
she has little like lima beans that look
Right.
more like fish at this point.
Right.
Like, she doesn't have proper human babies.
and I love this whole thing, this whole paragraph of advice about you'll have difficulty channeling sometimes, and Elayne's like, my gosh, you can tell all that from a weave? And she's like, no, I can tell it because I've had a bunch of babies.
Oh yeah, the whole like, so you're gonna have this issue with channeling, you're gonna have a hard time sleeping, your husband should definitely bring you lots of pickles and ice cream as soon as you ask for them. And she's like, wow, the weave is so informative. It's like, no, that's just childbearing. That's just the woman to woman osmosis that happens throughout the generations.
Well, because I feel like, didn't Elayne, she asked the dumb question of, does channeling hurt the babies? And so I feel like this woman had to be like, okay, well, if you're asking that.
And also, do you know how babies get made?
Right, yeah, right, yeah. There's a little bit of like, how ignorant are you at this point that you're having a baby and have been pregnant for this long and haven't considered that and known whether or not channeling would hurt the babies.
Well, because Aes Sedai don't talk about anything.
It's like someone with a cigarette in their mouth. Does smoking hurt the babies? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's also a discussion about Avienda's clothes here, right? Because she's in velvets, and Dylan kind of gives her a weird look about it. And then the Aiel wise ones come in and give her a look. And then they say, cool. You need to learn to live in both worlds. This is fine. Don't be too comfortable. We're going to start chipping away at your connection with Elayne a little bit. But for the moment, continue as you were.
I would have liked to see Avienda learn more from the wise ones at this point. Because I feel like at this point she goes back to them, and then in a couple of weeks they're just abusing the crap out of her because they want her to say that she knows as much as they do. Right? Yeah,
they want to raise her to wise one.
Right. So is that what this is about? They want her back so they can raise her up?
The timeline seems right. The timeline, they don't have a lot of time left to teach her in. So presumably they're looking at her going, oh shit, she's ready. We have to raise her so that way she can enter the last battle as a proper wise one. Mm-hmm. Because literally it's just a couple weeks, and they can teach her a few things before they start the nonsense. But I think it's that they don't want her to be an apprentice anymore. They're like, you've learned enough, but we can't raise you to wise one. We can't do that in the Andoran Palace. You have to end your exchange trip and come back home to the tents.
Does Avienda have one of the fewest POVs of any of our, main characters? Main characters being the boys, the Emmonsfield Five, and Rand's loves, right? And their significant others, right? Fael.
Yeah, I think Avi gets that intuitively sounds right to me, that Avienda gets way less POVs than any of the other characters that are central to our cast.
Right, maybe other than Tuon, but she's introduced so late.
Yeah, I wouldn't put her in the same category, because I put Avienda as more like Fael levels of importance for POVs, and we get way more Fael than Avienda POVs.
Totally, and they're good ones too. I really like the Avienda POVs because I always enjoy Aiel POVs. I think they're some of the best.
But broadly speaking, we don't get enough Aiel POVs. Just at all.
And Avienda is a little bit later than some of the Emmonsfield Five, but still.
Yeah, she shows up in book 3.
Yeah. Book 2, really.
Early days. Oh, yeah, she is in book 2, isn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's still in the she's in the first trilogy, so, Okay, so then we get weird thing about the whole sister crying over Rand thing. She's not only a sister, but a sister who loved him. They could share strength and make each other laugh when they wanted to cry, and cry together when that was what was needed. I don't know. That seems like a weird relationship dynamic to me, but...
Yeah, it works better as an actual relationship.
It reads so much easier if they're just romantically involved themselves. It's really awkward if you're like, no, everyone's straight in the situation.
No, and which I don't. I just sort of...
So they're going along doing their Well Mother exam, and then suddenly every head whips to the west because the beacon just turned off.
Right, because wasn't Avienda about to do it, and then right as she gets ready to, the beacon turns off, and everybody stops what they're doing. And so Avienda never actually gets to do it.
Which is too bad, because it'd be cool if she learned how to do the weave, on her, whatever. They're not nieces and nephews, but they're close to her family, and it'd be cool if she learned the weave, with her family members. But no, she gets denied.
And Elayne says, it's wonderful, it's done. It was wonderful. And I think her logic is good here, right? It happened, Rand's still alive. That means either he was doing it and survived it, or he stopped, and since he was at the center of it, right, chances are if it was bad, Rand would be in pain or unhappy or bad, somehow she would have a bad sense from Rand, but she doesn't. So he was doing something, so it must have gone well.
Yeah, I agree. That seems to be very reasonable logic, and it is in fact extremely true. So that's nice. And then they're sort of standing there in the moment of relief. knowing that, whatever it is, the world isn't going to fall apart and Rand isn't dead. And then Kassela comes in to let them know that the sea folk are pissed off because Merilil and Talon have absconded with themselves to get away from the tyrannical sea folk who are trying to leave. She is taking a apprentice to go become a novice because that's what the apprentice wants.
Okay, so Talon goes, right? What happens to Matara? I could not figure that out. She's the other apprentice that's missing, but she doesn't go with Merilil.
Are they both missing? I thought... No, one of their apprentices has gone missing. Talon and Matara, two apprentices were strong in the power, but if Morel had been able to talk either one into trying to become Aes Sedai, she might have been able to convince herself, blah, blah, blah.
The Sea Folk are in frenzy, one of their apprentices. So we don't know at this point which one has gone missing. Like, we know it's Talon, but
yeah.
The book hasn't specified which of the two is gone missing. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it's obviously Talon, because Talon is the one that approached Nynaeve, and we know that.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And then where do they end up? Did you look up where they land? Did they end up in Saladar?
We did look that up at one point. Talon... I don't have a final destination. I thought they were just headed to the White Tower.
Right. But then do they get there, or do they just spend the entire rest of the books on the road, having like a buddy adventure trip?
Talon vanished along with Merilil. She's most probably ran away with the Aes Sedai, where she came with the Dragonsworn contingent. Talon is seen in the Shaiel Ghul battlefront by Aviendha. She fights Hessalam along with Amis, Codswain, and Olivia before the Forsaken goes after Aviendha. They basically say, we renounce our bonds. We are Dragonsworn. That's why we fled. That's how they excuse the fleeing.
Okay, and they join up with which force?
The Dragonsworn. There's just a group. There's a group. So I was just listening. I did my re-listen. There is a group in the last battle that is mentioned very briefly in one of Matt's POVs, that he just calls them the Dragonsworn. It's a group of people who have forsaken all of their other oaths and just come to the last battle to fight. And included in that is a bunch of random ass characters that have disappeared, and they reappear in the group called the Dragonsworn. And that includes Talon and Merilil.
It was Brandon Sanderson doing a lost and found of all the characters RJ never finished up.
Yep.
Okay, but so Merilil and Talon have a total like mentor-mentee buddy road trip adventure where they decide that they are now Dragonsworn and they just need to go to the last battle and figure it out. And someone write that fanfic, because that's a whole ass novel that happens in the background of this decision right here. I've totally forgot about just the Dragonsworn generic and how, yeah, I'm working my way through Knife of Dreams, but I haven't gotten to the Brandon Sanderson stuff yet.
Yeah, I definitely was surprised listening by the Dragonsworn on my last re-listen. I was like, who the heck? And it's got, I think it's got Teslin as well from...
no shit.
Yeah,
Teslin
absolutely.
Baradon,
That's where where she ends up, yeah.
Well, given her relationship with Matt, I guess that makes sense.
Right. So, yeah, it's just, again, it does feel a little bit like Sanderson's grab bag of characters that Jordan didn't write an ending to.
But Jordan wrote him that world mechanism.
Yeah, absolutely. It's people who end up on the road and get swept up and don't have another alliance. But, of course, the pattern's going to get them to the last battle anyway. So, yeah, join the Dragonsworn, and they become a fighting force that Matt uses.
Yeah, all right.
And they've got channelers, which makes them actually useful.
Yeah, and Talon is super powerful. So even though she's untrained on that road trip, Merilil definitely gives her a bit of training, especially once they realize that they're going to go fight in the last battle. Like, Talon is not insignificant.
Or a circle, right? And then Merilil's got all that power at her disposal.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, Merilil basically just got the best Angreal ever.
Right. It is interesting. We don't see more of that, like, you can get Angreal or you can get someone to bond with you.
Yeah, just link up. Mm-hmm. It's not actually that hard. Yeah, it's weird. You don't see that happening more. Maybe it's just because Aes Sedai are really like...
Especially like with pillow friends.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like it's forbidden knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Super Skylake says it's called Suldam and Damane.
Right. I was going there eventually. I was going to say, and then all you have to do, really, to formalize it is get yourself a silver collar and a silver bracelet so you know who's serving who.
Oh.
And then, yeah.
No, this power dynamic
just
is
so
bad.
you're friends, right? Right? It's little Dom subplay, perhaps.
Yeah, you're just wearing your kinkwear in public as a piece of jewelry. It's fine.
Exactly. One of the places they check is the Silver Swan, which again, for the number of times that fucking Robert Jordan mentions the Silver Swan, you think he would do something with it, or any of the Aes Sedai who are coming in or out of it. But no. The Silver Swan is mentioned over and over and over again, and as far as we can tell, it's linked to Codswain. It's Aes Sedai who are loyal to her, which, again, this would make sense in a context of after the last battle, she becomes Amyrlin because she's created this other power base, right? And to integrate it into the reunited tower, which is the blue and the reds, right? Those are the two sides. You have all these independents that are out there. How do you integrate them? You make Codswain the Amyrlin, and then they are loyal to her, so they are merged back into the White Tower. That's the only thing. That's what I think Jordan was going for with the Silver Swan. Is the Silver Swan is going to be, again, White Tower, Black Tower, Silver Tower, the Silver Swan, right? Like,
better than Grey, given that Grey already exists.
Right, the Grey Aja already exists, so you can't do like this neutral other tower, but you create the Silver Swan.
Tower.
The Silver Tower.
So much potential. She hoped Rand had done something wonderful today, but she could not waste time even thinking about that now. She had a throne to gain and angry Atha Anmier to deal with. Before they could vent their anger on her, it was to be hoped. In short, it was a day like every other since she returned to Camlyn, and that meant her hands were quite full enough.
And just one last note that Amylia, Amylia, of the Brown Aja ends up being recruited in place of Marililla.
Oh my God. Jordan!
For a teacher of the Sea Folk.
Robert Bartholomew
He literally put
Jordan.
Oh man. Amelia in place of Marilil. Yeah.
That's what I say to that. All right. So next week we are going to be with Elayne. We are actually going to get into the camp on the other side of the siege, into Elayne's enemies' camp. And we will be doing that with Morgan, podcast of the Dragon, at her request. She wanted to help us get into the nitty-gritty of the politics while we get to be with the annoying/evil guys. So everyone get very excited for that.
Just so I want to support my Silver Tower theory really quick. Amelia, who gets recruited to serve the Sea Folk, she is shocked when Logain appears. This is Knife of Dreams, chapter 22. He asks her if she serves Egwene or Elaida, but Zaida doesn't let her answer. Because the answer is neither. She serves Codswain, and Jordan's hiding that.
Right, because Zaida says, no, she serves me, but Jordan's saying, no, she serves a third Amyrlin. I like it. I'm going to adopt that headcanon, at least on a probationary basis. And
it just gives me a little more closure in terms of why Codswain becomes the Amyrlin seat at the end of the series.
Yeah, I like that.
And yes, and I can't wait to talk to Morgan again. I always can't wait to talk to Morgan. Morgan's always makes me excited to see Morgan.
Yeah.
She's brilliant. So
Yeah, and this is a chapter I've been looking forward to doing with the podcast for a while. Like, just this Elayne chapter, there's so much to unpack and deconstruct.
Yes, this is really like, I think this is one of the better chapters because we're not getting like the 5th chapter in a row of Elayne. We're getting a new POV. We're getting an actual interesting politics and stuff like that. Although I did really enjoy this POV of Elayne.
Yeah, this one was fun.
This one was fun. This is one of the better Elayne chapters, I think, we got.
Yeah, we're hitting a non-sloggy pocket.
Yeah. Whew, that is a long chapter.
Yeah, we're going to want to really make sure to start on time
Okay.
and have somewhat coherent notes. I'm talking to myself mostly about that. Maybe don't highlight everything, Aradia. But yeah, that's going to be a long one, so everyone get excited for that.
I have up my highlight color for I am highlighting this just so I can, this is basically what happened this paragraph in this one sentence.
Versus like a
different color that I want to talk about. Yeah.
I should do that. I keep thinking I need to be at least dual coloring it through my highlights. That's, yeah. Because, yeah, sometimes you don't remember if it's like I want to talk about the meta or I want to just remember that this is what happened so we stay on track.
Like I think I've talked about my color choices before, but yellow highlighting is this is basically what's happening, right? A green is either relationships or battle related. Okay. Blue is this is how the power or the world of dreams works. Red is dark friends or anything else dark related. And I think that's usually green, purple, and then purple is relationships. And underline is
relationships.
Well, I'll say purple, green is relationships, romantic relationships. Purple are platonic relationships.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Green as in warders and their Aes Sedai and lovers.
Okay.
Whereas purple is generally like when the women are arguing about something. That's purple. When the boys are talking about how, he knows more about women than I do, that's purple.
Nice. Yeah, I switch my color every single chapter, so that way I can easily like flip through the book and tell where the chapters end because the highlighter color changes.
Sure.
And actually, I use ballpoint pen instead of highlighter to just underline because I burn through highlighters so fast. Ballpoint pens seem to last longer.
Doing it digitally makes it
easier, I feel really wasteful when I'm like throwing away like multiple highlighters per book. It's like
that makes sense.
The polar bears do not appreciate that from me.
And then underline is anything I absolutely have to talk about. Like this is a big point of topic, right? I have something to say.
I should graduate to doing ebooks, but I am reading a book with my grandma, and we're kind of like book clubbing our way through it chapter by chapter every time we talk. And I do highlight on that digitally, but it's just I just can't imagine having my brain work the same with the Wheel of Time books. It needs to be a book. If it's not a physical book, then the magic's gone, I guess. But I don't know. The other book I'm reading with my grandma is not. I'm not quite as invested in it. It's mostly just so that I have stuff to talk about with her. Because she is reading it in anticipation of driving a book club discussion in the fall. And so she's using her discussions with me to like come up with good questions for her like book club discussions and stuff, which is fun because I'm spicy compared to her normal way of looking at the world. So
Oh, I did want to bring up this news article I read. Death toll from Kenyan doomsday cult crosses 300. Since we are experiencing the end of illusion, and we have the doomsday cults sacrificing themselves in the Wheel of Time. I know it's a left turn. I'm sorry. It was just one thing I didn't get to talk to about during the podcast. But I was like, it's amazing that we actually have like a total of 303 people have died. Over 600 are still reported missing.
Wow.
And this is the Good News International Church, led by Paul Mackenzie, is accused of ordering his followers to starve themselves and their children to death so they could go to heaven before the end of the world. And this is without a big prophesized glowing ball in the sky.
I hate doomsday cults so much. Ugh.
But it's just as we are reaching this point in the books, we have yet another example of how something like this happens in the real world and can kill a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the stuff in these books is made up, and a lot of it is absolutely not made up. That's, ugh. I know when Jordan's like, I'm so sad that people were more bummed out by the Amayar's mass suicide. I'm like, I'm supposed to be bummed out that a bunch of people were so brainwashed that they killed themselves and their children? No. I mean, I'm bummed out, but not like it's... I don't know.
Also, you have to make them people first. Like, we didn't find out about them until they were dead.
Right, which, like, in the real world, I can care about people I didn't know about. But yeah, in the books, it's like, Jordan, you just made a death cult that had no personality behind it. Why would we care? But, I mean, it is very end of days out there right about now. So between all the centuries of Christian propaganda and the actual economic and climate catastrophes we're living through, like, the ground is fertile for those seeds to sprout and has been for decades, unfortunately.
Yep.
Oh, yes, Timber has come in
Timber's
because they've come home from work.
They got home from work, and the timing is actually pretty good. So thank you, everybody, for joining me today. I think I'm ready to sign off.
Yeah, thanks, everyone, for joining us. Remember to check out Hot Nuance. It's dropped into the feed. Yeah, thank you for listening to another Fox and Raven Media podcast production.
Shout it out loud and proud.
I'm trying to manifest it.
Fox and Raven Media. All right, good night, everybody.
Bye, everyone. All right, my recording is on, and it's so beautiful. There's actually a signal that's getting through that is robust. It's this is going to sound so much better. I'm sorry, everyone. My computer is an asshole and hates you. And that's why I've been sounding like crap for the last 100 episodes.
I mean, we've always talked about how we're constantly getting better at this. The signal chain on audio is so complicated, especially when we're trying to do things like run it into a live audience and record in 2 different locations and sync those together. And yeah, I think a lot of other companies have solved it by going to an online only solution, but we continue to struggle with our local ones. But then it doesn't matter how local you go, you still need the microphone to get to the computer.
Let me tell you about these motherfucking online platforms.
Tell me.
Okay, all right, get yourself a bucket of fucking popcorn, because I gotta back up. There's a couple of layers to this. This is not how I intended to introduce this. Okay, so hi everyone. I launched a podcast, and I'm going to talk about that in a bit. But in the course of launching a new podcast, I discovered how badly I was doing the old podcast. It was like one of those you troubleshoot things. Like, you're like, yeah, I know how to do this. I can just fire up a podcast. It's no big deal. And then you go to troubleshoot it and you go to record it. And like the first episode like is a mess because someone else puts the mic wrong. And then the second episode's a mess because somehow you end up recording on your webcam mic. And then the third episode, you discover that your computer itself has been receiving the signal wrong the whole time for like years, and it's just very frustrating. I am a professional, and by professional, I mean hobbyist that technically gets paid. So, anyway, that was, so then, okay. So the other frustration is the online platform thingamajiggy. So this new podcast, I'm like, you know what? Let's be tech savvy. Let's not deal with Audacity. Let's do this cloud recording thing. Because there's all these companies that are telling me on Twitter that they exist and they have a cool service and they do local recordings, even though it's cloud-based, blah, blah, blah. I have tried 2 of them, and they have both been absolute shit immediately. Like, we didn't make it 5 minutes before I was like, red flag, I'm calling it. We're switching back to Audacity. And doing Tarvalon After Dark means I get to experience a third, which is StreamYard, and it's okay. It's okay. But I still hear crap in their signal. And then, Zencaster and Riverside FM. Trash. Absolutely not worth my time at all.
I'd like to speak to the amount of spam that has come to our email that has gone up drastically in the last few days since you've been doing this. Like, they are selling our information
Trash.
to spammers. That's the kind of trash company we're talking about here. It's really just an unfortunate way to take advantage of people, not a service they're selling.
Trash. So, anyway, that quest continues. But the tried and true system of recording on Audacity at home continues to work. Occasionally, you just have to reboot your computer itself and check its settings, apparently.
I will shout out Audio Hijack as a alternative. And in fairness, that was my fault. I did update the software, and it did tell me to reboot, and I didn't reboot. And once I rebooted, everything worked fine. So,
user
yes,
error.
User error is there is a problem. You know, the problem exists between the keyboard and the screen.
Also, I wanna tell you guys that I got the Eyes to Die ring. I got it. I got the show Eyes to Die ring, and it's pretty cool.
That does look really neat.
It's honestly prettier in person than I thought it was gonna be. I don't know how well the camera's picking it up,
pretty
but
fuzzy,
it is actually tiger's eye. It's like a proper bit of tiger's eye, and I don't know, it's more pretty in person than I thought it was going to be. It is more lightweight than the original, like, fake Aes Sedai ring that's not real gold, but it's gold plated that I got way back when. But, you know, it's more fun than I thought it would
It definitely looks more like a costume piece than a piece of jewelry you would wear every day, though.
Yes, that's a very good way of describing it. But, you know, I got it for being that, and it is that. And I even got the right size, which I was very nervous about. So, yeah, that's kind of fun.
So I think, in that way, it stands out. It's visible. It's something you'll be able to see and identify from a distance in costumes, in pictures, in cosplay photos, right? Like, you really can't... The serpent ring just looks like a metal ring. You rarely can see the head biting the tail, right? Like, that's not something that's visible from a distance. This ring, very much visible in photos.
Yeah, for sure. And they picked actual rocks for it. They didn't just put, like, colored plastic or glass in it. They actually picked different semi-precious stones to polish and set in them. So there is a certain gravity that gets to sit on your finger, which is nice.
So would you say it's a brown stone in yours? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's definitely a brown. So you pick your Aja when you pick your ring. Yeah,
for sure. And yeah, it's tiger's eye for the brown Aja. So... yeah, nice and brown. Nice chalcedony with fibrous microstructures, you know, as one does. So that's my news. Oh, one last piece of news is I've made us a link tree.
Okay, yeah. You said you put that on there.
So instead of having a giant block of links at the bottom, like it's still 2010, we'll just have a link tree. For Watt Spoilers social media stuff, and our affiliate links will all be collected there, so it's really easy to get to them. And
did you say something about foxandravenmedia.com also having a webpage?
Well, I asked if we own the domain.
Which we do.
Because I want to make a website. I know nothing about making websites and have yet to even embark on my vision board for what it's supposed to look like.
Didn't you just say you started a podcast with somebody who's really good at making websites who also happens to be making a Fox and Raven Media themed podcast?
I don't want to bother her. It'd be awkward. I was never very good at the MySpace HTML situation. I very briefly flirted with HTML, and then it became out of fashion to do that, so I didn't have to. But yeah, I at some point in the very near future am going to have Fox and Raven Media as a business card website for my editing empire. I'm not uncomfortable. I'm like of such a weird mix of like confident enough to want to do this, but like incredibly incapable of talking about it. Like what?
Can you just say I am the Senate into the microphone in the most threatening way you possibly can?
I don't know.
That's a Star Wars reference.
That's the vibe I was getting. It felt like a Star Wars, but I'm a Trekkie.
Oh, yeah. So
Yes. Tell us why we didn't have an episode last week.
All right. And so I've talked about I've struggled with anxiety for a long time. It went away during the pandemic because I didn't have to talk to anybody, which was really nice. So I stopped taking Zoloft during the pandemic, right? Because I didn't really need it because the anxiety was just like gone because I didn't have to interact with people in the real world, which is the source of most of my anxiety, which has set me on a whole nother journey in terms of like, why do I get anxiety around people? Probably masking. Why is it masking? Probably autism. Let's talk about that later.
Sure.
Thank you, Aradia, for pointing that out.
Friends share, okay? Friends share.
Never pointed it out, and then I confirmed with Aradia, and she's like, you definitely should probably look into autism. And I was like, okay, fine. So anyway, on that personal journey is a progress for me. That was very Yoda-like. So anyway, Zoloft wasn't really doing what I needed it to do anymore. It was the negatives and side effects were outweighing the benefits, right? Which can happen with any drug that you take for a long time. I took it for 15 years.
Sure.
My brain didn't spiral in the same way that it used to. I've broken that cycle. I have coping mechanisms, stuff like that. But every once in a while, I still do get anxious. So I went and talked to my doctor and I said, I don't want to take the everyday drugs, but can I get something in case I do have a panic attack? And so she gave me a medication, and I took it the other day. And it was also, I was recovering from being sick, so I was also just very, very exhausted. After your body fights off a sickness, you're just tired. And I think the combination of what felt like being just absolutely roofied. I was so relaxed, but also I couldn't stay awake. I would go to watch a YouTube video and I get 2 minutes into it and find myself waking up at the end of it. I couldn't literally keep my eyes open no matter what I was doing. I would fall asleep in the middle of whatever. So I haven't taken another dose of those yet. They certainly calmed me down. The issue is I wasn't doing anything else. So too calm. So I'm thinking part of it was just I was coming off being sick, and but yeah, it's funny when you take medication and you try new medication, you have to be careful that you don't have plans for the rest of the day, like recording a podcast.
Yeah, I had my notes. I was getting my computer system set up, and 30 minutes before Seth texted me, and it's like, I can't function. I'm like, oh, okay, dude. You go drink some water, sleep it off, I guess. Yeah, drugs are tricky, be they pharmaceutical or recreational. Drugs are tricky.
They can throw you off your game. Also, can I just say, did Trump get arrested? Am I?
Apparently, AP News crashed. So I've just been getting barraged with news alerts all day. I'm not really paying much attention until the kerfuffle dies down and we actually have a coherent narrative. But he was supposed to report himself in court, and then he pled not guilty. So he had to go through the process of entering a plea, whatever that means. But he pled not guilty, so he had to do the paperwork and the walking through doors enough to enter a not guilty plea, I guess. I saw a very amusing video of Mike Pence trying to take toddler Trump out of a daycare, which was clearly AI generated, but it was really funny and I enjoyed looking at it. But other than that, I haven't been willing to keep up with it until the end of the news cycle day. Okay. Yeah. No, I'm kind of in the same way. Where I'm like, okay, I'll find out when this is all done. I'm not willing to put in the work. I also just feel like don't have a lot of reliable news sources right now. I feel like a lot of the places I've turned to, Twitter, Reddit, social media, they're falling apart. And I don't feel like I know where to go to find. And, places like the big news companies have felt like entertainment more than news for a long time. Yeah, I go to AP News when I actually want facts. because they're the top of the media bias pyramid. They're the most neutral and fact-based. Like, not the greatest website, and all their shit's long form. There's not a lot of like quickly packaged stuff. But yeah, I go to AP. But apparently, like, something happened to the big Amazon servers that like a million different organizations use, like, across the whole nation today. Like, Brandon was using it at work and it crashed, like, and he thought it was just him, and then it turns out it's like the entire nation. And AP News apparently uses some of those servers. So yeah, for me, news is a little dose of NPR in the morning, and then whatever people I follow specifically on social media to get news from are posting about. And then occasionally I'll go actually surf like the AP News app and see what's going on. And like occasionally like BBC or the rest of NPR. But like, yeah, I mostly get my news from just having a very curated social media feed. And it takes a few days for events like this to really filtered down to. Also, there's a lot of podcasts I follow that like are daily or weekly and kind of, or even monthly, and just kind of more long form keep me up. But yeah, this immediate shit, I don't have a good means of keeping up with shit live. I
need to ramp up my podcast listening. I had overbalanced it with audiobook listening. Yeah. And so now I need to bring a little more podcasting back into it. But yeah, and I once again I would pump Revelation Space for you in particular, Aradia. I think you would like that book. That's when I was like, I would almost want to do a new reader podcast with Aradia on Revelation Space.
Oh, maybe I should.
Like, that's I'm just saying, like, it's different because it's completely it's sci-fi, but there's enough non-linear time stuff in terms of like, you know, things take place over centuries as they travel between stars, and some stuff happens in flashbacks. There's a decent amount of like foreshadowing and things I think you could pull out of it, as well as like hidden characters and stuff like that. So without giving away anything, I think, you know, I don't know if that's something you'd be into, but I was going back and re-listening to it, and I was like, it's a very different vibe than anything fantasy or Wheel of Time, because it's hard sci-fi, right? It's hard sci-fi.
Wow. Well, Fox and Raven Media podcast production extraordinaire monster seems to be spinning up with an accelerating speed. So I'm not going to predict what's going to happen next.
I'm just saying. That might be fun.
And then I've got people yelling at me about Broken Earth spoilers. So, you know.
About what spoilers?
Broken Earth spoilers.
Oh, yeah.
My abandoned podcast.
Yeah.
Like, well, Radio's starting up a new podcast because she's not coming back to this one.
The solo podcast is so hard. It's so hard to do it by yourself.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?